Welcome to No Bull with Jason Noble, the podcast where we talk about HR and career issues. I'm your host, Jason Noble. We're here to share funny and interesting stories and advice in a transparent and down-to-earth approach.
Hey everyone, it's Jason, the running recruiter. Welcome to the No Bull podcast and thanks for listening. If you're in sales or a business owner, today's episode will be very interesting. We're going to discuss revenue leakage in your sales funnel and what you can do to fix it. So, the question we'll try to answer today is, does your lead to customer journey align with your business mission and the promise you make to your clients? That's a very fancy way of saying, hey, do you have revenue leakage in your system? And you don't want that. So one of the reasons so many business owners struggle with behind the scenes functions is really there's a common misconception that they're simple. In reality, they're not. They're complex and they only become easier when you're working hard to get the thinking clean and putting the proper systems in place. So how do you solve it? One answer is organizational effectiveness. Really is a foundation to maximize productivity and achieve your business goals. When there's a problem, it signals there's a gap in your process. And luckily, they can usually be quickly identified and fixed. So with that, we're going to discuss a few strategies today. My guest today is Deanne Kelleher, the founder of Chaos Group. Chaos Group, what they do is they simplify processes, they remove barriers to success, and they deliver immediate impact with measurable bottom line results. Deanne, welcome and thanks for joining me.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So let's start first with how you got into organizational development in the first place.
Cool. It's one of those stories that it was completely unplanned and it came naturally to me in the beginning. So when I was much younger, I was working for a business owner in town and we were using one of the software and working very closely with one of the software companies. And the owners asked if I would help other business owners adopt the software. And we're talking a while back, right? When we were going from papers, from paper to digital. So I started to do that and realized how much I loved it. Yet I still hadn't formed what is that job. So I simply continued on working with business owners, creating ops manuals, helping them with their processes, something you do with friends where you just walk through the process and say, okay, what's the problem? How can we solve it? And it's also collaborative and exciting for me. Figuring out where a gap in a process is like,
Ding,
where
ding,
the
ding.
light bulb lights up completely, right?
Yeah.
So that's how it started, and it's allowed me to navigate and hold some really wonderful positions with companies. But working in Chaos Group as the company that provides this to owners and leaders is what completely fills my boots.
That's good. That's good. I'm glad. So let's first talk about lead funnel management. So what is it?
So lead funnel management is simply taking the people you meet or the people who reach you through your website or that World Wide Web and ensuring that we greet them as though we would stand up and shake the hand of someone at the table across from us joining us for lunch. And then we take care of them. We answer their questions. We help them figure out if we're a good fit. And because today is so fast moving, sometimes we need to reach out a couple more times. And it's not to say, hey, did you want to buy? But it's more so to say, hey, here's who I am. Here's what I do. Maybe you would need this because. And it's those what we call touches that creates a lead funnel. So you imagine it just like that big funnel that you pour water into to go into the bottle. And we're just bringing people down with different touch points so that they can decide whether they want to become a client. And if you think about it, a client could potentially be a client for 1, 3, 5, 7 years. So if you ask yourself, how much is each client worth to me? It then possibly makes you think a little more strategically about how are you going to reach out to them when they first contact you, or when someone shakes your hand at a networking meeting like you and I met. We
Mm.
both went, yeah, we should definitely, connect,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Because you get that places. So that's the lead funnel and the management of it.
So talk to me about for small, medium-sized businesses, what are the most common bottlenecks in a lead funnel and how can they be effectively addressed so that the business can streamline their process?
Yeah. So the most common bottlenecks with small to medium-sized businesses is a lack of clearly defined lead stages. So what do I mean by that? If I were to say it really simply, it would be that a process has not been created for how you're going to deal with your leads and how are you going to deal with them at each stage. So think of it this way. If we are taking a client from prospecting, so let's say they've reached out to us on our website. So we are now connecting with someone who has put in an effort to connect with us. We need to define whether they qualify to be our client, whether we qualify to be their service provider. Then we have to think about negotiating and then closing. So prospecting, qualifying, negotiating, closing. However, it's not a sales thing. So if I can ask anyone who just thought, well, I don't sell, to think of it this way. When you are qualifying with someone, you are simply having a conversation with them. When you hang up the phone from that conversation, what do you send them? How do you touch base with them next?
Mhm.
What is that process? So if I send you an automated template that is unrelated to our conversation, it doesn't work. There's a problem in the process, right? So it could be an automated, hey, thanks for taking the time to speak with me. I'll send you a personalized email within the next 2 business days. And then what you do is you send them that email. The next step, though, is if they respond, great. What is the next step? If they don't respond, what is the next step? So if you think of everything as a step that you go through, so you've figured out how to acquire prospects, you've decided what you're going to do or what questions you're going to ask on your discovery call. And then that follow-up, the proposal stage, what are you going to say to them? And then how are you going to follow up if they don't reach out? How are you going to close it if they do?
Mhm.
So it sounds like a whole bunch of things that we're thinking of. And I haven't even talked about when you win the business,
Mhm.
what do you do then? Because then it's a whole onboarding process. Because our clients, we are onboarding them into our world. How do we work? When are we going to touch base? How are the meetings booked? How do you pay? All of those things. Again, that's a whole other process. But going back to the question, bottlenecks are simply not thinking out each stage of the process and creating if-then scenarios.
So what about multiple channels? So traditionally, you may deal with a prospect through phone, internet, maybe you're meeting someone at a conference, what have you, but you have all these different channels and obviously there's CRM systems to handle that. What advice would you have for businesses to be able to manage all those multiple channel touch points?
Yeah. Oh, and that's the really hard part for most people is the copious amounts of ways we can connect with people, or we hope people will connect with us. And you said it in the question. It's a CRM system. Defining which system to use is the hard part. Working with people who have used multiple systems and tested lots of softwares, used lots of different tools. Those are the people you want to be asking questions to, because each business is very customized. It's not a blanket answer like you should just use Google Workspace, you should use, Microsoft Outlook, because if you're going to use the Microsoft platform to manage all of these multiple channels, the one key thing is all the names have to go into the database. Automations that the Microsoft platform provides are buildable, but they're behind the scenes. Most people think of Microsoft as Outlook, the email. Well, you don't want to be managing multiple channels or your business in general through your inbox.
Mm-hmm.
We're bigger than that now. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be able to say, hey, this client came in from this platform on social media. This client came in from networking. This client came in from speaking events. And the reason why we track the multiple channels is so that we can actually identify what works in our business. Where are people coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Is the advertising that we're paying for on Instagram working? Are the speaking events that you are doing for possibly a lower cost than you might like generating you business? Because if they are, then do more. So that's the way you manage them on the different channels. Having the right CRM system that also enables you to customize your automated responses so that you can start bringing those people down that funnel, that's a key.
It's important that you say that, but there's a lot of businesses that I've dealt with where, particularly larger businesses, and these are companies that invest millions into their CRM system. Yet I still get calls from different people in the same company who have no idea that I just contacted someone yesterday or today or 2 days ago, and they have no idea what I talked about. So clearly there is some breakage there. There's something going on that's not working.
Yeah. And sometimes it's for a couple of different reasons. One is if the company has scaled, oftentimes what you'll see is that companies add on different platforms and possibly not all from the same. So, I can't even think of an example off the top of my head, but that's where they started off with one platform and they've added in another. So maybe this sales team is not connecting with the internal team. And the reason why I couldn't think of an example is because I'm thinking about Salesforce. So Salesforce is a huge platform. But what you can do on the inside of Salesforce is you can disallow your sales team or specific teams from seeing the data of other teams, which then becomes a little bit complicated because people like you get 2 or 3 phone calls and nobody can see the information because the marketing team will only have access to ABC data. The sales team will have access to other data. So what these companies are doing are scaling, growing, increasing their outreach. They may be missing the internal processes to make it really smooth for the lead that they're reaching out to or the customer.
Then
We see this a lot.
Then isn't it really about transparency, making sure that there's open communication between all the departments? Because when you have that, when I get called 3 times from 3 different people, it makes me not want to do business with the company again.
I know. It breaks my heart when I hear that. It so breaks my heart. So generally, the transparency is there. What I think and see often happening is, let's say there are 6 team leaders and they increase their use of Salesforce. And these 6 teams, 3 of them are doing outreach of different types and they're not communicating with each other. All of those leaders are transparent. They're probably really, really good at what they do. But Jason, nobody is going to say, hey, we should have a meeting on the process and the workflow just to make sure we're hitting the mark 100% with everyone we reach out to, right? And this is why people call Chaos Group. And I swear I'm not doing a pitch, but I end up being like that person that everyone wants to be, but can't be, because you only have so many resources that you can use personally within a day, right? So it becomes like everyone wants to participate, but they just can't. No one person can take on a project like that on their own, because it's meticulous, it's persnickety. The results are brilliant. You end up with documented processes, but it's really hard to ask people who are already doing their full-time job to take this role on.
So speaking of which, let's talk about the data a little bit. So if I'm a business owner, like, how can I ensure my lead funnel is consistently converting leads? Obviously, it's not going to be 100%. It's no one's going to hit 100% on conversion, but that I'm doing a good job. How can I make sure I'm consistently converting leads into customers and identify where the improvements are needed?
Okay. So the first thing I would say is, I can't help it, I'm going to say it, document the process. So if it's kind of like that, I know.
That look was just, that was awesome.
It's because
you
nobody,
can't say, anyone listening to this, you can't see what she did, but just her facial expression, just, we're laughing at her.
It's because I say stuff like this and people do laugh. Like, I find Excel kind of sexy. I find documentation like empowering. It's not really seen or felt that way by everybody. But when you can document the process, or when you've documented the process, you can actually measure the results. If you have nothing written down, you can't measure
No benchmark, no measuring. I get it.
Yep. Right? So when you have documentation, and I'll spare you from going on about everything that you do in your business from your email signature onwards, but when you have the documentation of your process, what it does is it allows you to go, oh, okay, so lead comes from LinkedIn. We respond this way. Their data goes into our CRM. We respond this way. If we hear nothing, we respond within 7 days and say this, right? And the word transparency that you used I love it, because I will transparently say to people, I'm going to send you 4 emails over the next 4 weeks. You're welcome to unsubscribe at any time, because I'm being compliant with the castle law. And when we are transparent, people can tolerate it more. They also appreciate it, because you know what? We're all so busy. So many people are just trying to empty their inbox or get through all the actions, the to-dos, the meetings, all of that sort of stuff. So document your process, monitor the progress. So you're going to be monitoring that against, what are your marketing initiatives, right? What are your outreach initiatives? And then you want to start measuring the results, because results do not lie. But you have to think about, over what timeline are you going to measure the results? And you also need to understand, and this is where I love working with marketing teams, because they understand that thing that we call touches. It used to be a gajillion years ago, 3 touches and you close the deal. Now it's 9 emails, 17 networking events, 14 phone calls. I don't know. But when you document it and you monitor the progress, you can actually measure the results, and then you refine it.
Yeah. And just on that topic alone, like, just from a B2C perspective, just as an example, like, when I go on when you go on an e-commerce website, you can very easily measure at what step in the process people are abandoning their carts. Was it the homepage? Was it the second step? Because you want to simplify that and make it as clean and easy as possible, because the more barriers you put up, the more steps you put up, the more likely someone's going to abandon the cart. So that's one thing that I know that a lot of e-commerce companies have worked on. One area that I've noticed that e-commerce companies have not worked on is post-sale. So once you make a sale, I start getting inundated daily with email messages saying basically buy more. Here's 10% off.
And
Here's 15% off. Buy this, buy that.
yeah,
And it actually becomes to the point where I quickly hit unsubscribe and
yeah.
they've lost me as a customer. So
Mm.
have you ever encountered that with any of your clients and how do how do you work with them on that?
Well, it's interesting. When I've encountered that sort of thing with clients, it's interesting because they've usually brought in an organization to help them sort of boost sales, boost communications. They've created a social media strategy of some sort. And I like to talk about the pendulum effect. You go from zero, so
Mhm.
you have nothing, then you hire someone and you go to the other extreme. And it can be challenging, but you also have to ask yourself, or I have to ask myself, what is the mission of the organization? What is the culture? What is their objective over their marketing initiatives? And if they're fulfilling their need, it's not for me to weigh in on the marketing initiative, right? Because I'm not the marketing, I'm the process. But what we can do and what we do is work together to think about ways that are less of a turnoff to the average human.
Because it really, absolutely, because this really is about nurturing a relationship, right?
Oh my gosh,
So
yes.
I'm like, I don't have that, but if you treat your customers like, maybe this is
Humans?
not right, but but like a friend, basically someone that you want to have a conversation with, right?
Yeah,
Someone that you enjoy and not just inundate for the sake of trying to generate revenue, which that's the
yeah,
ultimate goal, but think of them as think of it as nurturing a relationship.
yeah,
Then, that can not sending me emails every day can help me perhaps and other people want to continue to buy with you long term. Because once I
yeah,
unsubscribe from those emails, you've lost me.
yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Something popped into my head while you were saying that, and I'm sorry, I really was listening. I
No
did
one
I did mean
can
to
I
have this
tell
thing pop in my
no
head.
no one's don't worry, no one's listening to this podcast anyways.
Okay. So, in in a CRM platform, one of the things you could find out before you buy is when someone has purchased from me, can I break down further their area of interest for future communications, right? So maybe you want to be reached out to when they're doing an evening webinar or when, they are selling tents
Mhm.
for the summer camping. Like, so when you start to look at your business and you put it into categories or groups or seasons, just like you would about when do you start promoting Valentine's Day or Halloween, right? It's thinking about all of it so strategically. And it's really, really cool because when you understand what your process is and you can flip back and go, oh, okay. I mean, digitally flip back.
Mhm.
It's not in a
Yeah,
book
yeah, yeah.
anymore. But you can look at the process and go, okay, you know what? Why don't we take out these 3 hits
Mhm.
and actually see if we can't create a more engaging, more connecting type of communication? And that allows you to test.
Absolutely. So when I was in marketing, the functionality you've got in digital marketing today just wasn't there. So
Yeah.
I was on the print side as well as also when digital was starting. So, data was very limited, but now you can segment based on behavior. What did someone
Yeah.
click on? What did someone read? How many pages did
Yeah.
someone go to? All that data is there. So to your point, you can easily segment and then send someone information that is relevant to him or her.
Right? And that's funny that you say that because it's when you talk about, pages on your
Yeah.
website, it's really important to understand where are people hanging out on your website and what page are they clicking from? Because to your point, they're telling you,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? All you have to do is find the numbers, but again, not always as easy as we make it sound.
So let's talk about implementation a little bit. So, what are
Okay.
some simple data driven tools or techniques that small businesses can implement just basically to make sure they ensure consistent follow up and alignment between not only their sales goals, but also their actual results?
Okay. So I think so when we're talking about data-driven tools and techniques that people can use, the first I would say is identify or streamline your funnel. So actually know the stages in your funnel. That gives you the opportunity to make sure it's running smoothly. And back to your first question, identify bottlenecks. Document your process. And it could literally be a bunch of boxes on a piece of paper that have arrows. They do this, then this,
Mhm.
then this. And if they don't do that, then this, right? So document the process. Engage your team or yourself to be really cognizant of manual tasks so that you can consider automating them. And it's not just to automate, but it's automation for accuracy, for efficiency,
Mhm.
for the ability to measure the results, right?
Mhm.
Using your analytics is helpful, which we just talked about. The follow-up, if you're going to leave your follow-up to be manual, you better follow up. People love when I teach my business courses at the college, the one thing I always say is, if you tell someone you're going to do something, you damn well better do
Do
it.
it.
Right? And I tell you, I will be making coffee some afternoons going, I really need to do that. I really need to do that because I didn't put it in,
Like, like
my,
I feel the pressure when there's a task, it's like I got to do it right away.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes I
Yeah.
like to avoid, I'm just going to be
No.
honest,
Yeah.
but and that's a whole task management thing. Like, are you using a good place that you trust to write down all the things that you're supposed to do? But if it's about leads, try to reduce what you do manually as much as humanly possible. It also gives you the chance to hire like a virtual assistant or another team member just part-time on your team or full-time, or hand over the task to someone who actually wants to be doing it. And it also gives you the opportunity, if you're like a solopreneur or you have a small business, it gives you the chance to say, here's how I want it done, right? Here
Mhm.
is how I'm doing it. So for owners, it gives them a chance to pass on their knowledge. And you can also sell your business for more when you actually have documentation. And I think the key thing that we've touched on a few times here is really aligning sales and marketing.
Very good. So it sounds like the three things are develop a process, make
Mhm.
sure you document, monitor, and measure. And then number three, make sure you keep looking at the data, analyze it, and fix the problem areas.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for summarizing. That's so good. Yes.
Oh.
What you said.
We're just gonna segue over to what I call the noble round, which is just some fun Q&A. So,
Okay.
what's the one thing in life that you don't plan? Because you're very
Oh,
organized. What?
yeah. When I am off the clock, I don't plan. Like I honestly have adopted a turn off switch. It's sometimes hard to
Good for
find,
you.
but when I
Yeah,
do, it's like I
yeah.
have no idea what else I do for a living.
Good for you. I
Yeah, thank you.
I'm kind of like that too because like during the day very organized and
Yeah.
at night when I'm done I just whatever chill watch Netflix or read a book or something like that.
Yep. Yeah.
Very good.
It's nice. It's fun. I think it gives us all a break,
Yeah.
you know?
Speaking of which, what was the last book you read or a Netflix series you watched that you recommend?
Okay. The Coaching Habit. Where is it? I've
Where
got
is
it
it?
right here. Yeah. Oh my gosh, these are like my favorite books. Michael Bungay-Stanier.
Okay.
So he is a Canadian. He is this brilliant guy. Oh my gosh. Yes. So this book is called The Coaching Habit.
Okay, I'm writing that down now.
Yeah. Say less, ask more, and change the way you lead forever. I got to tell you, this book you could literally open this book to any page and learn something, right? Oh, how's this? Moving from performance to development. Right. Sorry, I won't do that to you. But yeah, he's an amazing guy. I would strongly recommend any of his books.
Perfect. And last thing, I will put it in the show notes, but how can people reach you?
Oh my gosh, thanks for asking. They can visit me at chaosgroup.com. So it's spelled KAOS group.com. On the website, join me on LinkedIn, drop me a line. I'd love to answer any questions people have.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed this and I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please like and rate us and spread the word. Do you have any questions or suggestions, or are you an HR leader that has great stories and advice to share? Then send me a note at podcast@noblesearchgroup.com. That's podcast@noblesearchgroup.com.